Welcome, one and all, console war veterans and civilian noobs to the third episode of Green vs. Blue. This week's topic, when will the console wars end? We are your hosts, David Brown and PlayStation Pat Fennel. Green vs. Blue is a podcast where we, your hosts, discuss the two best gaming platforms in the world, Xbox and PlayStation.
You can find us on the show at patreon.com/greenversusblue, or you can communicate with the show at psboxcast@gmail.com. That is psboxcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube at Green vs. Blue, where we have two new playlists this week of some live streams that we have done and a video essay by David SD Dog Brown.
Cool.
All right. David, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find my socials at basically just my YouTube account at the moment. It's SDDawg, so that's SDDAWG. Also Twitch, you can find me at SDDAWG as well, SDDawg.
And you can find me on YouTube at Variety Pat. That is VARIOTYPAT. Or, David, on my new Instagram this week at PlayStation Pat.
Nice. Good job on securing that name.
Thank you. I was completely blown away that it was still available.
Well, let's get into today's episode because we got a lot to talk about. Our first segment is called Retroscope, and that is a segment where we correct ourselves if we made a mistake in our past episodes. And I think we have a couple of things to touch up on. Pat, if you want to lead with that.
So last week during our cross-examination, for purposes of complete clarity and transparency with this show, I did say that the Xbox One was released a year before the PS3. That is completely incorrect. The Xbox 360 had been released the year before the PS3. And following that, we discussed a Forbes article saying that Halo had been pushed to late 2021. The date that the Forbes article had referenced was an Amazon listing for December 31st, 2021. David.
I was speculating a bit that the release of Halo Infinite is going to come at the end of the year. However, I still think that's going to happen, and we'll touch on that more in a moment. But for the time being, yes, that is a placeholder date for Halo Infinite.
Cool. All right. So, Dave, what have you been playing this week?
Actually, so I switched it up. I haven't been playing Halo 5. I kind of got off that wagon for a bit just to give myself a breather. I've been playing a little bit of the Super Nintendo Classic. My brother actually came over. He's a couple of years older than me. So we grew up on this Super Nintendo, and we just popped that bad boy in. Played a little bit of Super Mario and a little bit of Contra 3. And then we kind of got bored a little bit in, but...
Sure, old games are old.
Good palate cleanser, though.
Yeah, Super Mario World is actually the first video game I ever owned.
Same.
Yeah. I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas when I was 4 years old from my grandmother, and later that day, I popped in Super Mario World, my first ever game, and a game I still have never beaten.
Yeah, my poor dad grew up on, the Atari and like Pong and stuff. I mean, not my poor dad, but you know what I mean.
Your regularly wealthy middle-class dad.
Pong was everything to my dad, and I think that kind of carried over to him buying the Super Nintendo, and I don't think he played it too much, so we kind of inherited it, and we got we used that console to its, to the fullest extent.
Cool.
Anyways, what games are you playing, Pat?
Dave, I still have yet to play my PlayStation. As I've said before, I'm currently out of town away from my PlayStation. People, I promise you, I play PlayStation. You know what? I'm going to have a ton of streams coming up planned for next month. In fact, if you want to head over to the Patreon right now, I threw up a poll this past weekend asking people what they think the first game I should stream should be when I am back on that in September. But besides that, I played a little more Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, but yeah, not too many games this week.
All right, speaking of new games this week. Xbox actually has one exclusive that came out. It is called Tell Me Why Chapter 1, and I think it's one of those story narrative games. I never got super into those, but if you like that type of stuff, kind of like Life is Strange, go check it out. I think it's on PC and Xbox.
Is it from the same studios as Life is Strange?
I want to say yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I know those are pretty good games, so we'll check them out. Well, over on the PlayStation side, we have a lot more games this week. A little more than...
Some of these are third-party games, though.
Correct. Most of them are third-party games. I started combing through the weekly drop on PlayStation. There used to be a post that was made weekly on the PlayStation blog called The Drop, where every single new game at least got a description, and you could easily comb through. Well, that no longer exists, so the easiest way to check is by going to the PlayStation Store and checking the new games this week. So, that being said, Madden 21 is out. I don't think either of us really play Madden, but what's interesting about that is if you want to pay $70.99 instead of $59.99, so like 80 something dollars, you can get the cross-gen version, and that might be in fact the first known cross-gen game that you can pick up. Furthermore, we got Project Cars 3, nice little racer, and a cool game I found, Captain Tsubasa, Rise of New Champions, which is actually a soccer game. David, did you ever see the old film Shaolin Soccer?
No.
So Shaolin Soccer was this very goofy film in about 2003, and it's very much a combination of soccer film and old kung fu karate film with superpowers, and that's really what Captain Tsubasa is. So I'm actually hyped to maybe pick it up soon. Furthermore, we got Vader Immortal in VR. I'll probably be doing a playthrough of that soon enough. Road to Guangdong is a Chinese developed game, which we really do not see here often in the West. That is in fact available on PS4, Switch, and the Xbox One, and that is a road trip simulator. But supposedly it has a really good story and worth the playthrough, but I do enough driving and road tripping in my life that I don't need a full game of that. Finally this week on PlayStation Plus, September 1st is the first Tuesday of the month when the PlayStation Store is updated every Tuesday, and the first Tuesday of the month is when new PS Plus games are added. This month we got Street Fighter V and something I might be able to cross-play with you, David, PUBG.
Yeah, buddy.
So that's it for this games this week.
Awesome. All right, so let's get right into our cross-examination segment this week. It's pretty meaty. We got a lot to talk about. So, as the title says, next generation release dates. When will the console Cold War end? And we are in a Cold War. We're in a standoff between Xbox and PlayStation. But anyways, before I get into it, I just want to let our new listeners know our cross-examination segment is a segment where we talk about Xbox and PlayStation, where they intersect in the gaming world right now, and we generate a discussion about it. So, this week, following up the cross-examination of our last episode, there were coincidentally a couple of news sources that shared our speculation about our dilemma in regards to upgrading to next-gen consoles. So last week we talked about, should we upgrade to next gen? We listed a lot of reasons why we should, why we shouldn't. Anyways, it's kind of funny. A couple of articles from Kotaku and Forbes mentioned exactly what we were talking about, which is kind of funny. So we're just continuing that discussion a little bit and taking it a bit further. So we have a Kotaku article titled, "Maybe Just Delayed Next Gen Already," and a Forbes piece titled, "But Seriously, Could PS5 and Xbox Series X be delayed to 2021? They both listed out even more reasons why we should be hesitant in upgrading. So Ethan Gatch, writer of Kotaku article, echoes our sentiments here, and I quote, "I'm sure next-gen consoles and their hype-evoking, if historically mediocre, launch lineups might give that routine a welcome shot in the arm ahead of the long, cold winter. But there are plenty of current-gen games now and in the time ahead to fill that role." So that point backs up our acknowledgement that although this upcoming generation's launch titles are hugely lacking, but pretty much every generation beforehand had little to offer as well, pandemic aside. But speaking of the pandemic, Gak continues in this article. He quotes, "More importantly, we're in the middle of a once-in-a-century global pandemic that has completely upended daily life, the economy, and the companies currently racing to create console gaming's future. Meanwhile, there continues to be great recession levels of unemployment, even as financial relief programs are already being phased out. Pre-ordering an expensive new console comes with added amounts of risk and self-loathing, knowing that the stock market will probably crash again at any moment, and that millions are facing an unprecedented wave of home evictions." So he makes a pretty solid point here. We barely touched on the pandemic side of it, like a split second in our discussion last week, but I think we should probably really just address this angle about it. Pat, what do you think about how the pandemic's affecting not only just society right now, but specifically about the consoles and releasing this?
David, we can keep discussing it if you want, but I touched on it last week, and I think it reigns true, and this guy doesn't bring it up in his articles, But I still think these companies are completely reliant on this 5 to 10 year cycle. They have 5 to 10 year plans that are lined up around the release of this console. There are other companies that are relying on the release of this console, despite so many games being delayed, so many production lines being messed up. These companies can't afford to not release these consoles. And, excuse me, the United States is the only country where the pandemic is still a crazy, absolutely overwhelming problem. I'm not discounting that there are problems in other countries regarding the pandemic, but we seem to really have... I don't want to get too political about it, but we haven't handled it the best. The results and ripples that COVID has caused in this country are much more than other countries, and that doesn't mean just because we have social problems going on doesn't mean a video game console should be delayed necessarily.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's so much that has already been in plan for years that just to delay it, it would be a phenomenal loss for all of these companies. But at the same time, regardless of what it is, what the situation is, it does feel a bit tone deaf. Even though they can't control that, right? They can't control it. It's not their fault, but it just seems like tone deaf that like, oh, hey, like these new consoles are going to be $500 to $600 plus, your external hard drives that you got to buy for Xbox, or like the controllers and the game prices going up. That's a whole nother issue, but it just feels so weird that we're coming into this new generation with just amidst all this stuff. Like I don't know.
It sucks, but I don't know if we talked about it much last week, but the different fights that Xbox and PlayStation are playing, and I think Xbox is really in a great spot. That part of its dumb luck is that they have sort of built their marketing around this xCloud game streaming system where you don't necessarily need a Series X, and I think they've done a great job marketing. Phil Spencer himself saying you don't need to buy a Series X, and maybe that you would think that would quell some of these articles like the Kotaku one.
Yeah, just strange times we're living in. It just seems like a juxtaposition between like what's happening in the future and what's going on right now. But I think that we'll put that part to rest. All right, so continuing with the Forbes article written by Paul Tassi, he goes on to make more valid points about the state of the Xbox and PlayStation for this holiday, and I quote, "Sony has lost Deathloop as a console exclusive launch game. It still has Gearbox's Godfall, but that's also on PC and won't commit to a release date other than quote-unquote holiday, despite the fact that we're about to enter that season. That might be tied to the PS5 release date, but it also seems like we've barely seen anything from Godfall to date." And on Xbox's side, there was an article by Engadget that reports that Bungie veteran Joseph Staten returns as the project lead on Halo Infinite. So that's another clear sign that Halo Infinite needs a bit of a lifesaver. So both of these platforms have their own problems with their first-party titles that were supposed to launch on console. So just even more reason to, just even more of an argument to say like delay these consoles. But
I can't imagine how much they're paying this guy Joseph Staten to come back and write for these games at this point.
I wonder what the budget is for Halo Infinite at this point, because before it was rumored to be like 500 mil. Just right off the bat. Like,
really?
Yeah. And that would be, if that's true, that would be the most expensive game ever created, aside from like GTA 5.
Then Halo Infinite could conceivably become a platform. And at that point, rather than 2 or 3 $250 million games, a $500 million investment at the beginning doesn't seem that radical.
So, but in the wake of both platforms delaying significant titles and being knee-deep in a global pandemic, I just want to double down on my argument that I made last week. I totally think, while there's no chance of it happening, we agreed on that Microsoft, Sony should hold off for a year. But anyway, so in the wake of both platforms delaying significant titles and being knee-deep in a global pandemic, I just want to double down on my argument that I made last week. Totally think, while there's no chance of it happening, delays, I think they should. Anyways, we're gonna continue the discussion here. So in the wake of a global pandemic, while there's no chance of these platforms delaying their console releases, I just want to double down on my argument that we made last week. But let's move on to this week's point in our segment. So while I think the most pressing part of this issue is the console Cold War that's going on, we've entered into, essentially. We're in a complete standoff between Xbox and PlayStation in terms of release date, in terms of price. We're in September, pretty much.
In terms of functionality, in terms of UI.
Yeah, but going back to the Forbes article, he does touch on this aspect of it. So, quote, PS5 has not revealed its price or release date. There's currently no event on the books that signifies when that might happen. The Xbox Series X has not revealed its price date or release date, and while it said it has some sort of Xbox event that was pushed to September from August, we don't have any details on that either. Microsoft also still needs to debut an entirely separate console, the Lockhart, or what's being called the Series S, the lesser version of the Series X. At the same time, where it has not even publicly acknowledged the existence of the lower spec unit as of yet. End quote.
So David, yeah, we do not have any dates. We don't have any prices at all yet. We have no idea how much the games are going to be. We have no idea how much these streaming services are going to be. But I am going to pull one news article that was going to be in Fast Fire News, because there are many relevant points to cross-examination discussion today. So, Black Ops Cold War was officially revealed this past weekend. One interesting side note about that is it does have multiple endings, which I thought was kind of cool, and we have not really seen much from that. Furthermore, there were no big actors, no Kevin Spacey Advanced Warfare this time, but some cool voice actors, including Bruce Thomas, who has acted as Commissioner Gordon in 3 Batman movies recently. Anyways, side note done. So, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War has been released for a November 13th release date. And based off this date, David, we can infer a little bit about when these consoles are finally going to show up. So, November 13th is in fact 2 Fridays before Black Friday, Thanksgiving weekend, when the U.S. holiday shopping season truly takes off. And so that leaves 1 week in the middle after November 20th as a single Friday where Sony or Microsoft could in fact release their consoles. And I do in fact believe one of them will release on November 20th. Now, that being said, we could have a total wild card of November 25th or November 27th, the day before or after that Thanksgiving holiday. And I think that would create a good press boost, because if there was a Black Friday release of one of these consoles, those things are going to sell out in 5 minutes, and one of these companies would be able to completely take advantage of that press. But yeah, besides being able to infer some stuff, we really don't know anything about these consoles. We keep hearing holiday, and that is the most definitive time window that we have really gotten.
Yeah, I think so. We have the PS5, we have the Xbox Series X, both in this weird extreme game of chicken. Like, this is the craziest it's ever been in any generational release. I could be wrong. The thing that you just read, I at this point, I just don't care. Like, we both know that they're coming out in November. We both know that they're coming out probably mid to late November. It's like, just say something at this point. Just, who cares? I just don't get it. Like, how much money are you really going to lose from going first?
A price, anything.
I just don't. I don't know, man. We're definitely in a console cold war. I don't think it's beneficial to either company to just keep doing this. I mean, how much longer could they go?
Sony doesn't want to be in the wrong or get one-upped by Microsoft, and at the same time, Microsoft doesn't want a Xbox One PS4 flub where the Xbox One was announced, not received well at all. The next day, Sony has their press conference where they release and announce the PS4. They come in at a price point $100 less. The E3 press conference room erupts in crazy applause. And then on top of that, just the cherry on top, icing on the cake, Sony makes this literally 30-second video with the CEO and Shuhei Yoshida, who I forget his exact position at Sony PlayStation, but it was a video of how to trade games on PS4, and they're handing each other a disc.
No, I understand Microsoft doesn't want to do a repeat, And I think Microsoft has the best argument for delaying. But Sony, I feel like Sony has so much power on their side right now, just given that Halo Infinite's delay and like just where it's at right now. Like Sony won this year. I think they won. And I think that they should just come out and say it. Like they're gonna have the upper hand no matter what. So I understand Microsoft's side, but I don't understand Sony's.
If Sony comes out at $100 more on the PS5 versus the Series X, I don't know if they have the upper hand anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe the Series S that we keep hearing rumors about, but we have absolutely no idea about. If Sony came out at a price point of $500 and the Series X was also $500, but hey, wait, you can play all of these on an upgraded Series S console at $300. Sony's kind of out of luck.
Yeah. I'm really just curious as to when is this going to happen though? Like, because I think Sony doesn't have an event where they're going to do this. Microsoft does, but they haven't let anyone know when that's going to be. Like, are we going to be in like October and we don't know? Like, just imagine, dude. This is going to be crazy.
I think maybe Sony has some supply problems as well. For anyone that is interested in picking up a PS5, right now Sony has opened up direct pre-orders through their website. If you do not already have a PSN ID, you're kind of out of luck on being able to try and pre-order a PS5 for the time being, as we don't know any retailers that are doing it. So anyways, Sony opened up this direct pre-order. You can go to their website, you enter your PSN ID. Yeah, so it looks like pre-orders are going to be based off of some sort of activity baseline, trying to figure out who would use these consoles most the first day. Maybe if you stream some from your PS4, then you're also going to get a boost. They're going to want to have PS5 in the max number of streamers' hands. But yeah, your direct Sony pre-orders, we have no idea on price. You have to do this sign up with your PSN, and then they will email you on your associated email address. And for the time being, everyone is limited to one console, 2 controllers, 2 charging ports, 2 headsets, 2 remote controls, and 2 cameras. Which I thought was interesting, that you can get 1 console but still 2 cameras. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but maybe that indicates something about PSVR and the inevitable PSVR 2 that we'll be releasing.
Well, we'll definitely keep you guys updated on that. Well, there's no doubt that we won't. I mean, we're a PlayStation Xbox Standard podcast, so we'd be doing you a disservice if we didn't. But yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on the Cold War that's going on between PlayStation and Xbox. Let us know what you guys think about it at our email at psboxcast@gmail.com. If you guys have any suggestions about our podcast in general, just drop us a line. Is that all you got to say about the segment? I think there's not too much to talk about here, but I think we covered it. But this is like we're getting close. We're nearing.
Hold the line. Hold the line.
I just want to know like the absolute last day that like both like any of them. Is it just the week before? Like
I hope we have to show up to Target on November 20th with we don't know how much money in our pocket, but we walk in and that's when we find out the price.
Yeah, they just blindfold us and we go into Best Buy and like that's it. They just tell us a number. That's it.
No, that's ridiculous because the prices would leak at that point. So we'll definitely hear.
No, I want it to go to the absolute last possible minute. Let's move on to our fast fire news. This is a segment where we just kind of spit the news at you. We're talking about the Cold War. Let's heat it up a little bit with the fast fire news.
All right, so first off this week, we had our annual Gamescom conference that is ordinarily held in Europe this year. It came out a little bit as a wet fart and was held exclusively online. So first off, we got Little Nightmares 2 was revealed and will be launching in February 2021. David, I know you played Little Nightmares 1. What do you think about that?
I love that game. I picked it up at GameStop just on a whim. I didn't even know what it was. I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy it. Totally worth it. Great horror game. Kind of reminds me of like Tim Burton art style a little bit. It's a puzzle platformer, super creepy. I think they got some like transmedia stuff going on. I think they're doing a show, and they have I actually have a comic book that they have as well. So they're doing a lot with that franchise. Really excited to see what's going on. You said they debuted a little bit of gameplay.
Yeah, a little bit of gameplay debut in this launch trailer that we just got for Little Nightmares 2.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
And in fact, Little Nightmares 2 was the only game in 2021 with a month also attached to the announcement. So all other announcements for 2021 that were made at Gamescom are ambiguous through the year.
Cool. What else we got?
So also we got Medal of Honor Above and Beyond from Respawn Entertainment. And that's actually a VR game that's coming out in holiday 2020. So we'll see how that is. We also got Sam & Max VR, but literally no platforms, no more information than this little silly 30-second teaser trailer. Furthermore, we got Lemnis Gate, which, and I quote directly from the trailer, turn-based strategy shooter in 25-second time loop. So I'm imagining sort of some Deathloop, Fortnite. I enjoy the concept. I don't know how this game will be. It doesn't sound that appealing to me. But it's cool to see some new mechanics and a change up from the samey campaign shooters that we've had for going on a decade now. Speaking of time loops, 12 Minutes was revealed, and that is a time loop murder mystery. Yeah, the real interesting part about that is Daisy Ridley from Star Wars is involved. James McAvoy of that movie Split. I forget what else he's in, but great actor. And finally, Willem Dafoe of Green Goblin Spider-Man fame. That's not what made him famous, but... Great actors. Three amazing, exceptional actors in 12 minutes. Furthermore, we got Unknown 9 Awakening, and this is some dimensional shift game with a little girl, no gameplay or anything. And then finally, Outriders coming holiday 2020. So then finally, we got Outriders was revealed, and that is coming holiday 2020. And I would say, just to imagine it, it's about 60% Gears of War, 40% Final Fantasy 15 as far as the art style, the gameplay, what may have you. Outriders was in fact the only launch window game that was announced at Gamescom. So also this week, the DC fandom event revealed to us Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And this was revealed alongside the 2021 The Batman with Robert Pattinson, which looks like some emo, grittier version of Christian Bale's Batman. And the Riddler's returning as the villain, which I'm very, very excited about. It also looks like it might, in fact, tie into the same universe as the recent Joaquin Phoenix Joker film. So Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is developed by Rocksteady Games, the makers of Arkham Origins, Arkham City, Arkham
franchise.
Yes, correct. And it really looks like a DC's answer to the Marvel Avengers game that will be coming out next week, and I'm sure there will be more news on that next week. So it takes place in an open world metropolis. We got an evil Superman in the trailer. Brainiac is the big baddie, and he's got a squad of villains following him around.
2022 release.
2022 release?
Great.
Jesus Christ.
We're far off.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and shelve that until 2022.
Cool. What else we got, Pat?
But in 2021, we got Gotham Knights, which was also revealed at DC Fandom. And Dave, that will be coming to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, probably Xbox Series S at the same rate, and PC. And that will be your real true follow-up to the Arkham games. This time you get to play as Batgirl and Robin, among others. Finally, last but not least, Fall Guys. As we discussed last week, I said we had 16 million players last week. Well, on August 26th, just a couple days ago, Sony announced via their @PlayStation EU Twitter that Fall Guys is in fact the most downloaded PlayStation Plus game of all time.
Nice.
As of August 23rd, it had 21.1 million players, so I can only imagine it got higher after that.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Dave, do you want to cover this last story?
Yeah, so we've been keeping up on Apple and the Epic war that's going on. So Apple actually removed the Epic developer account from the App Store. So that means no Epic games are on the Apple Store at the moment. No Epic games that have already been downloaded can be updated. They're kind of just nixing that, and that's kind of their response to Epic's deliberate breaking of their terms of service. So Epic CEO Tim Sweeney fired back on Twitter. There was an email screenshot specifically saying, quote, "We hope that Apple will also make these options equally available to all iOS developers." And it continues, but basically the ball is now in Epic's court. Apple has responded. We'll see how this goes. It's clear that Epic did this as a deliberate marketing strategy to kind of get people rallying up, and they're trying to take down Apple. They're trying to take a big chunk out of them, and I don't think it's going to happen personally. I think Apple might reign victorious on this one. I'm not rooting for either company, but I think that's what's going on right now.
I'm not happy with either company. Apple's been taking a 30% cut from all of their developers, which on one hand seems a bit egregious, but on the other hand, I think Epic's CEO is kind of I think Epic is really the scar to Apple's Mufasa, and Apple might not be the perfect king, but
they are king.
But Epic is really doing some dirty tactics with all of this. And Dave, I did have one thought about all of this. Epic did release their own game store and games front last year that was competing with Steam. I could foresee at the Epic store being on Apple iPhones, but they don't want that to happen if Apple's taking a 30% cut. So that all being said, there's more going on with this story than either one is letting on.
It's apparent that Epic's trying to be more than what they are. They're trying to be more than just a company that has a killer engine, their own platform on PC, beyond Fortnite. They're trying to become this big corporation like Apple. There's a YouTuber I follow named Jim Sterling. You probably heard of him. He's a really good YouTuber. He covers this at length, and he basically says, both of these companies they just want it all, and they're putting their customers in the middle, and I think that's what's going on. But we'll definitely cover it. It's super interesting nonetheless. We'll keep you updated on that.
Cool. So that's it for Fast Fire News this week. That brings us to our rotating segment.
Yeah, the week before, we had Pat's self-righteous rants, where Pat ranted for a little bit about just rants about whatever. This week, I'm having a little bit of my own. So this is a PSA, Dave's passionate PSA.
Dave's passionate PSA.
Passionate. So we've been talking about Call of Duty a bit. There's been just a ton of news, and actually a story that got buried under all the other news. When the Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War trailer debuted, there was a split second of Tiananmen Square protest footage from 1989 that was actually slipped in. There was a bunch of, political stuff going on.
Your classic Tank Man image.
So your classic Tank Man image was inserted into the trailer. Quickly, it was censored for China. But the kicker is it wasn't actually censored just in China. It was censored worldwide. So the trailer that you can view in any country now omits that footage, which I just want to personally speak out about that and let everyone know I'm not a big fan of Activision, just straight up. We did talk about in our first episode about Activision's partnership with Tony Hawk and how that's a really cool story that's going on. While I think that Activision is such a big umbrella that you can't completely boycott their games and you can't completely protest against them, but the irony is in their trailer, it's called Know Your History. And in the trailer that's called Know Your History, they delete history. So I just think that's a complete... you know what I think about Activision doing this? Just shame on them. Shame on them for cutting out the Tiananmen Square footage. They're appealing to this oppressive government, and they're just doing it for their bottom line. And they've been known to do this with Blizzard. They did this during an esports game. They suppressed a Hong Kong professional player. And I just think this is rotten to the core. I know it's only a second of footage, but they're literally just taking out history. This is an event that people were protesting for pro-democracy, and there was about probably 10,000 people that got mowed down and killed, and this is just horrible. So I think Activision should probably check themselves before they come out with a trailer called Know Your History.
At least change the name.
At least change the name. It's a bit ironic, it's a bit hypocritical, and that's a complete understatement. So that's my PSA of the week.
Cool, I like it. I had no idea about that story till you brought it out to me. And my interpretation of it is that Activision is merely responding to the I don't know the exact name, from the anti-libel laws that were rolled out to hold down anti-government retort there in Hong Kong, wherein China can prosecute people for saying bad things about the Chinese government, even if those things were said while outside the borders of China.
Yeah, so we're pretty much canceled in China by this point. That being said, but
it's gonna be. You thought the last 20 years were crazy technologically. Wait for the 2020s.
I think it's an interesting game Activision plays. They want their games to be controversial enough with like Modern Warfare and the violence over in the Middle East, and like that with that game in the campaign, it was very provocative. And they want to play this weird balancing game where they want to be controversial enough so people are interested in their games and the violent content and the controversial political stuff, but at the same time they want to be apolitical and they want to censor their games and not be too hot on any topic. I think they know what they're doing, and I know that they know what they're doing. So we're keeping our eye on you guys.
That being said, their controversy has worked. They got their 5 minutes out of us, their 5 minutes out of you who's listening, times God knows how many listeners. That is way too much time for Activision and Call of Duty to be taking up. So that being said, you will probably not be hearing about Call of Duty Cold War on this show until that release date come November.
All right, well, that's pretty much it, Pat, unless you got anything else to say.
No, that's it today. So people out there, we have been your hosts. That is
David Brown. That's me. You can check me out again, SDDog at YouTube and Twitch. That's SDDAWG.
And I have been your host, PlayStation Pat Fennel. You can find me on my new Instagram at PlayStation Pat Fennel.
But most importantly, Green vs. Blue can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and we'll continue to roll out our ancillary podcast services. Also check out our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Green vs. Blue. That is Green vs. Blue. You can reach us or be potentially featured on the show at psboxcast@gmail.com. That's psboxcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions or just suggestions about the cast, please let us know. And we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya. Thanks. Bye-bye.